Here we go. Welcome to today's chat. If you are new here, let me just say, I am Allison Lane. I am your host and facilitator of this community. And I am so glad to welcome you and to explain what it is we do here. So in this community, we are writers supporting writers and ourselves as writers. We help each other get published and market our work. My background is Fortune 50 branding and running PR for all the brands you know and love, and probably the ones that you don't like. If you have a 13-year-old son and he's like doing the sexy 7 with the Axe deodorant body spray, I apologize for that one. And we have published writers, we have agented writers, we have published writers who don't have agents, who found their own way. So whatever your way is, even if you just yesterday picked up a pen for the first time and thought, maybe I'll write this down, you're at home here. The rules are ask for what you need and share what you know. And that means if you're in the community and you see somebody ask a question and you can actually add context or perspective or a path forward for someone, do that. If you have a tip, share it. We want to include cross genre. You know, we've got Mona Mijas, who writes sci-fi, fantasy, and nonfiction poetry. You know what? We mix it up. It's whatever you're bringing to the party, that's what we want. Now, today's guests are going to blow our minds, because one thing that we know about publishing is that it's hard to figure out how to get from where you are to where you want to go. And because this environment is changing all the time, and the industry is changing, today's guests are a publisher who her career has been in publishing, and a writer who has done so much and traversed along the way. So let me first welcome Brooke Warner, CEO of She Writes Press, co-founder, innovator extraordinaire, who had the foresight to leave her traditional publishing role at Seal Press over 10 years ago. When dirt was new and God was a boy, she thought, I might have an idea, and went out and created this new press focused on getting women published. So Brooke, thank you for being here. We herald you and appreciate you. And also Allison Hong Merrill, whose memoir 99 Fire Hoops has pierced my soul, and everyone should buy. And when you hear her path to publishing story, you will understand why there are many paths to publish your work, and that there are certain ingredients that help. Resilience is one, tenacity is another, indignation at being told no might be another, but we will hear it from Allison and how she promotes everything that she's doing and turns it into her next best move. So with that, I'm going to ask Allison and Brooke to unmute, and let's get this party started. Now, Brooke, as a publishing insider, I want you to get us steeped in what was and what we're dealing with today, what we're seeing shift today, because you have witnessed and really been part of a transformation from the inside. Before co-founding She Writes Press, why don't you start by sharing how She Writes operates and how it works, and then what you witnessed before, like what was life really like before?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. She Writes came about in part because of my disillusionment with traditional publishing. So the entire press is built on sort of the opposite values of traditional publishing in some ways, right? The concept was always that what we would focus on is the writing and not necessarily the author's brand or the author's platform. And the reason and rationale behind that was because during those years at Seal Press, 9 years that I was at Seal, and prior to that, I was in the industry for 5 additional years. So 13 years of traditional publishing. And the sea change that you're talking about was really this moment where all of a sudden, the marketing team had more input into the book acquisition process than the editorial team. But I had not been brought up that way. I came of age in a publishing era where the editorial was everything. And so as this marketing machine was encroaching onto the acquisitions decisions, I didn't like it, of course. It felt like we couldn't take chances on really great books because the author didn't have the platform or the brand. And so the idea behind She Writes was really spawned from that I wanted to just be able to publish these beautiful books. And lots of times authors don't have a platform and they need a book to have a platform. So there's this catch-22 inherent in the whole process. So She Writes was born out of that. And of course, it's morphed a lot. I have to say that I have some deeper appreciation for the traditional industry for doing She Writes, and I still think there are lots of places in which it's flawed. But the biggest thing that's happening now, of course, is just consolidation. And so it's very difficult for authors trying to navigate this space. And I think what's different, when you talk about before and now, is just there are many, many more writers and people getting published in the space. And so you have a vast number of authors, writers, and they're all competing for the same share. And so the traditional folks have really, kind of gotten tighter and less nimble and less creative. And then there's this whole new territory of alternative publishing happening. So it's exciting and it's kind of a wonderful thing to be a part of, but it's also, I think, inherently confusing and sometimes disappointing for authors until they find their way and get a sense of empowerment.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I was like, wow. Yeah, so interesting that you say there are more writers now, but is it because people can actually, or people sharing more, because the industry itself is still hard to break into, or is it because people feel like, I think I could do this, I could write something and let me find a way and use my network or my internet to figure out the path?
I think it's the latter. I think that more people are writing, and I think it's a skill set that most of us have, and hopefully the best of us teach ourselves and also take classes and really learn how to write. But memoir is in its current iteration is a relatively new genre. I mean, people have been writing memoirs for a long time, but not in the way that they're writing memoir now. I think that our culture also really values and looks up to writers, and having a book published also gives you so many opportunities no matter what your business is. Mm-hmm. So I think people see books differently than they did in the 70s and 80s, and now it's just more accessible. Anyone can do it, and there are more platforms to support the possibility to do it. And traditional publishing has been reacting accordingly, by just saying, okay, well, the only books that we're then going to publish are the sure bets. But sure, there is no such thing as a sure bet. So there's a lot of space in the industry for authors to break out and succeed and make their own successful paths, because whether they're publishing traditionally or not, the reality is that no one knows how or why books are going to take off. There's sort of a secret sauce, which I think is what is exciting about it. It could happen to anyone.
I love that. It's not the lottery, folks. I mean, Brooke, what you just said is so tremendous. You can find your way. You have so many choices. You have options, and
Yeah.
that's what we're here to share. And I'm sure I can already see people lighting up the chat, and to also offer an example. So, Allison, this one's for you. Your path to publishing, to find the right fit for yourself and for 99 Fire Hoops was unexpected. It was long, and I know that you've told this story before, but can you share a little bit about how long this was, how many queries, and what led you to choose a hybrid press first, and She Writes. I mean, it's a little commercial for She Writes, but like, a lot of people in this group ask about She Writes, so I really want to share.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the question. So first, I think a lot of us have heard this saying that writers are beggars who tell other beggars where they have found bread. And so I would like to thank everyone for the opportunity to allow me to tell you where I have found my bread. To answer your question, it took me about 4 years to write 99 Fire Hoops, and it took me a whole year to query agents and publishers, and I received 149 rejections from agents and publishers. And now I have to change my background so I can show you something that's very important to my process of finding She Writes Press. So let me change my background, and I want to show you this. This is a permission slip that is signed by myself, and I use this permission slip every day. I give myself permission to do whatever works for me, to take care of my mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, financial, social health. And so after receiving 149 rejections from agents and publishers, naturally I was disempowered. I feel like a failure, and I feel like, well, why would I even bother thinking that I could write, that I could get published, right? And so I put aside my manuscript for a time because I was very frustrated. But then in December of 2019, I discovered a TEDx talk by Brooke. And you can find it on YouTube. It's there. It's a wonderful talk. And in the talk, Brooke says something that really struck me. And I apologize if I'm just reading these words that Brooke said in her TEDx talk that changed my mind about publishing. She said that sometimes it takes walking through fire to see the path that you thought you wanted to be on was not meant to be your path. So often our creative pursuits are tied up with a desire for external validation, which then somehow confers legitimacy. But legitimacy cannot be bestowed. You have to take it. You have to take it. You make a new room for a new dream, and you manifest on your own terms. And when I heard those words, I can't tell, I'm getting emotional right now just reading those words. Brooke changed my life. And that's not even hyperbole. She changed my life with those words. I thought, oh my gosh, she's talking about me. She's talking to me. She is inviting me to greenlight myself, to greenlight my work. I don't have to sit there and wait for people to tell me yes. What if that yes never comes? What then, right? And so that day, after I heard Brooke's TEDx talk, I submitted my manuscript to She Writes Press for evaluation. And that was the right choice. That was the right decision that I made for my career. I said yes to my own work after I did that. See, I gave myself permission to do what works for me. After I said yes to myself, I greenlight myself. Brooke said yes. Brooke said, hey, I believe in you. I believe in your work. Let's work together. Let's make this happen. And so my book is now out, 99 Fire Hoops. It's well received, and I have a world of gratitude to Brooke for believing in me, for allowing me to have that platform to share my story. So that's how I found She Writes.
Thank you.
I have chills, and I'm sure other people do as well. The permission that people feel, even saying, I'm writing, because it's tough to reveal to your neighbor or the mean lady on the PTA, what do you do in your spare time? Oh, I'm writing. Because it's immediately like, what are you writing? Have I seen it anywhere? Like, no, girl, give me a moment. I'm in a writing community. I'm meeting other writers. I'm getting inspired. This is not, I'm getting a haircut. It's not something you fit in on a Friday, or thank you for being here on a Wednesday. And, oh, thank you. Brooke put the link to the TEDx talk in the chat, which I tried to do, but it didn't work. And so giving yourself permission to show up, to be a part of these conversations, to submit your work is part of the coming back. Even if it's hard yesterday, you can start a new day today. And Allison, 149, let's call them declines, like, rather than rejections, because I'm sure I went on more than 149 first dates, but I don't call them rejections. I call them not the right fit. And then you found Brooke, and She Writes. And so this next question is for both of you. Oh, before I get to that, Allison, you said the book has been well received. Let's be clear about what well received is. You're understating the understated. Over 30 awards. I don't even have the list, but I was like, honestly, really? I don't have the list in front of me, but it was like this list and that list and every list, and over 30 awards in like under a year. And what I love about what you do is you merchandise the heck out of each and every one. I'm nominated. I won this, or I'm at the award. And so this is a lesson for anyone out there. If you're nominated for something, that's news. You screenshot it, you save that. You save the logo, that it becomes part of your brand toolkit, because you've heard me say it before, and I know you can say it with me. You are the brand and your book is a product. So you need all of those assets to be able to market yourself moving forward. And Allison, you are a genius about that. I love it. But also, this is an example, not just an inspiration, but an example that we can all follow. Now, this next question is for both of you, because the options in publishing have changed quite a bit. And even the options, the definitions of those options have changed quite a bit. I thought we could steep people in just a glossary, like let's do a little vocab and give some perspective. So we've got traditional, indie, small, university, hybrid, self, vanity. Let's start at traditional publishing and explain. Let's slice and dice it. Brooke, maybe you can take this one and start us off.
Yeah, I mean, just start with the definitions. I mean, I think everybody knows what traditional is, and obviously the appeal of traditional publishing is that they cover all the expenses and or offer an advance, right? So traditional publishing is sometimes called legacy publishing. Most people, when they're starting out, they're looking for a traditional publisher, and I think for good reason. You know, it's of course you'd love to have a traditional publisher, you know, pay all your expenses and support you and give you the red carpet treatment and all the rest. But the problem is that it's just not really how it is for the 99%. You know, the 1% gets that red carpet treatment, but and then there are lots of small presses, and that's important to say as well. There's university presses, there's, you know, little micro presses. So there are a ton of different kinds of publishers out there, and it's important to understand that as well. But no matter what, if they're fronting the expenses, they're relying on your author platform to sell the books. And that is, you know, why I answered the question to say, you know, Allison probably did not have a big enough platform for the publishers that she was submitting to, because they're really just looking at the author and their brand. And you can have a beautiful book, and I have done it myself at Seal Press many times, rejected fabulous books because the author didn't bring enough to the table for the marketing team. So I just can't say that enough times. Did you want me to go down the list and just talk about the other kinds?
Yeah,
of
let's hit it. Yeah.
Hybrid, what we do, it is important to note that it's author subsidized. And in being author subsidized, I mean, that does give us the freedom and the permission to be able to just look at the projects for their own merit. And what the authors get in return is a much higher royalty. It's a real co-publishing endeavor, you know, because we're not accepting everything. We do have a rigorous submissions process. However, that rigorous submissions process does not rely anything whatsoever on author brand or author platform. It is not coming into the equation by design. So we're also not the only hybrid publisher. There are many others out there. And so it's important to look at what their offerings are and to see, you know, what they bring to the table. I think what's unique about us is that we have traditional distribution and we have a rigorous submissions process. So there's those two things. And then down the road, you know, I mean, there's self-publishing. Clearly, I think everybody knows what self-publishing is, but there's myriad kinds of self-publishing within self-publishing. There's assisted self-publishing, there's DIY self-publishing. I mean, Carla's here and she knows everything there is to know about self-publishing. You guys have probably heard about it, but there's also service providers, right? And service providers are people who are essentially supporting you to publish. I don't think that they are hybrids, nor are they self-published. They're just companies that are out there to help you get published. And that is a viable way forward. It's just that the terminology and definitions within this alternative space is getting very muddled. And a lot of times I would say the language is even being co-opted, you know, so just be mindful to try to make your way through what the heck it is that you're doing. And because you mentioned vanity, I will say about vanity that I don't like that term anymore. I think it's an outdated one, but I think it still comes up because people will say, well, vanity is any process that you're doing where you're paying. But I think not so much anymore, you know, and also if you look at these like giant, beautiful, you know, cookbooks or corporate books like a William Sonoma or for that matter, George Lucas, you know, I mean, all of these books that are by like high celebrity kinds of people, those are vanity projects at this point, you know, because those are the books that a company or a person is saying, here's my brand book. And so I think that vanity is often leveled as an insult. And I just say that for all of you to be mindful about it, because sometimes people will say, oh, well, you just did vanity. And my counter to that is that people who are still, you know, using that term are probably trying to disparage whatever your process is, you know, so I think it's important to understand that in terms of where we're landing in today's publishing landscape.
Yes, absolutely. I want to roll back a minute and talk about what you first said is a traditional publisher does everything. And what I think we can say is everything is subjective. There's this expectation that the traditional publisher is going to take your, you know, your words and go and like polish them and work with you and really like be with you for a year. And it's not true. And they don't pay for everything. If they feel like you're not, your work isn't where it needs to be to hit the deadline, the cost of the ghost doctor is yours.
Oh,
And
sure.
the marketing plan is yours. The marketing budget a traditional publisher sets aside is really for SEO and keywords. So everything else is yours. So if you're out there thinking, I really want to go traditional because I want someone to take care of it and I want them to market this book and me, they launch a product, which is the book in the most efficient way possible, which is, you know, covers off a couple of things, and everything else is your responsibility. And you will not, you know, I'm sure we would love to think that the publishers become your best friends and you go on vacation together. It's not true. They're not your soulmate. They are working with a skeleton crew because traditional publishers keep reorging, and now the editor is also the project manager and doesn't really get to edit. So everything is changed and changing. And I think Brooke has a great point that what sets She Writes apart is distribution. That's not something that you can take on as a solo author. If you're self-published, you might say, you know what, Amazon is all the distribution I need. And we have very successful self-published authors in this group, and that's good for them. But if you're looking for something else, you can decide what those criteria are. And thank you, Brooke, for bringing that up. Okay, we're going to get back into, we'll get questions in a little bit. I want to make sure we get through a couple of other questions. So Allison, when you think about where you've been and your journey and finding the right fit, seeing that TED talk, and then the next day thinking, this is, I'm going to submit.
You got muted, Allison.
Oh, sorry. It was a fast yes for Brooke, it sounds like. I don't know if she was just standing there with her, like, ready. I'm ready to catch it. What do you wish you could tell your pre-published self about what it was going to be like, what to do, what to think? What guidance can you offer that, you know, pre-published Allison that we can apply? No pressure, but we're all hanging on your words. Okay.
Thank you. So if I could tell my pre-published self about the publishing journey, I would tell myself 3 things. First one, the journey to publication takes time because, you know, you want to present the best version of your work out into the world. So don't rush it. Just be patient. Be patient. And the second thing is to always and be consistent to practice the art of self-care. And that includes taking care of your mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, financial, social health. In all aspects of your life, take care of yourself. Because if you take good care of yourself, you will be able to then create the best work to present to your audience. So take care of yourself. And the third thing is that each writer's goals for his or her books are different. And so success looks different to everyone. And so just do what you think works for you. and what works for other people might not work for you. So don't compare yourself with other people and then beat yourself up if you feel like you're not as successful as other people. It's because your definition, your goal for success is not the same as others. So always take care of yourself mentally and emotionally. Don't compare yourself with others. Just do what works for you. Also, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself that you might not know. When I was in first grade, I discovered that I have a reading disorder, and I don't read well, so I don't write well. Although, okay, and that said, I was never that kid who said, when I grow up, I want to be a writer. That was not me. I knew I could not be a writer. Or at that time, when I was a kid, I did not think I would become a writer when I grew up. But during recess, my classmates would gather around my desk and listen to me tell made up stories. And when I was in 6th grade, one day, one of the girls in my class wept when I told a story about a lost coin. And she wept, and I watched her face, and at that moment, I knew I had what it took to become a storyteller, even though I could not write well. I could tell stories, right? And so for me, being a writer is telling stories on the page. It's the same thing. Essentially, we're all telling stories, right? And so my goal as a writer is to share stories centered around universal themes and illustrated by human experiences. And so I see writing success as being able to reach people I would otherwise never be able to reach, and to connect with them soul to soul, my soul touching your soul, right? And so what works for me is to treat my audience as family, as my classmates, as those people who enjoy listening to the stories I made up or the story, the true story I tell. My goal, what I tell myself is that to never treat my audience as customers. And that's what works for me. It might, other writers might disagree with it, but personally, I treat my readers, I treat the people who invited me to book club discussions, I treat them as my sisters, my brothers, my uncles, my aunts, treat them as my family and not customers. And that way, it helps me to be more authentic, as if conversing with my clan members who supported me, who, always cheer me on, and I can return that kind of emotional support in a meaningful way by sharing more stories with them. And I feel like that is how my relationship with all these, with my audience can last longer than my book's shelf life. And also, I have a secret weapon to my success, to my writerly success. Okay. And that is the contact information of Allison Lane and Brooke Warner. You need to have Allison Lane and Brooke Warner's contact information in your writer's toolbox. That's how you become successful. Put their contact information in your toolbox.
I love it. Thank you first of all, thank you for that. And thank you for the tears. I love it when I multiple chills. I want to point out something that probably, Brooke, I would love you to comment on this too, but as a lifelong marketer, I take issue with marketers who group people in a dehumanizing, terminology like my audience, which is it takes the individuals out of that perspective. And so you put it so beautifully. You're sharing your story with your sisters and your uncles and your brothers. And as a as a marketer for authors who loves storytellers, I think of it as you're sharing a message that someone else needs, and they're looking for you. They're out there. You don't have to go find them. They're actively looking for you and raising their hand. And if you use modern marketing techniques, which I share here, you can connect with those people so much faster. And how dare you not? Because your humility or your tentativeness, it's hindering someone else's progress in their human experience. So that's my pep talk. But Brooke, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I loved everything thank you, Allison. It's absolutely true. I don't know all what people are writing, of course. I mean, Allison wrote a memoir, and I work with a lot of memoirists, and she publishes a lot of memoir. I think that the same can be said of novelists, but I think it's uniquely true to memoirists and people who are writing personal story, what you're talking about, right? Because people are looking for that connection, and people feel like they know you, and you're inviting them into such an intimate part of your life, even though it's this very public thing. And so and I do think, when Allison was talking, someone had asked in the chat, why was Allison so successful? And I absolutely think it's that authenticity. I mean, she shows up to everything, so kind, so genuine, very, incredibly generous. And that resonates with people. And there's like a mosaic of reasons, I think, for book success. It's everything from the package to the story to the author behind the story. And so when you see a book that is successful in the way that Allison's has been, I think it's because like all of those pieces are working. It's not just one thing that you can be like, oh, I'm going to template this and that's going to make this book successful. It's this tapestry of things. And that's why I said earlier that the traditional folks, they don't have a corner on that. Any of us can access that success by working all the different angles that it takes to have a successful book.
Right. And a successful relationship with each of those people who want to engage with you. Yeah. Some of them will buy your book. Some of them won't, but they will be super engaged on your Instagram. They will comment on every TikTok, or they will show up at events, or they will be the person who invites all those other people to buy a ticket to the conference where you are speaking. So whatever pathway you offer to to that reader, who cares? Because you're doing them a service. And Brooke, what you said about memoirists for sure, and novelists, I work nearly exclusively with nonfiction writers who become subject matter experts through their experience. Mm-hmm. But sometimes they write memoir, but sometimes they have advice or insight. So it's not memoir, but what makes their book successful and an easy yes for a reader or a traditional publisher is that they're storytellers. They're not just shoving advice. They're saying, this happened to me. I went deep. I feel a responsibility to share this with the people who need it. And here it is. It's a gift. And so I think that that's universal. And Allison, I just love you so much. So Brooke, what you've shared is this really collaborative relationship that She Writes has with each and every one of the writers that you bring into the relationship. And still, every author needs a clear vision for where their work is going to show up and who needs it to be their best marketer and to have a plan beyond that book, but also for that book. What elements of pitches that that you get before you have that collaborative experience. What elements of the book proposal or the book itself illustrate this most for you? And realize that if I don't say this, everyone is going to say, like, is it what's on page 3? Or is it like the comps of the book proposal? It's so get specific.
So you're talking about like positioning the work and thinking about like, how do we think about like getting the product out into the world kind of question?
I'm saying when you have to, when you get to read a bunch of proposals or pitches coming into She Writes, when there's an absolute easy yes, what are the elements of those? And
right.
Obviously, let's assume the writing is fantastic. But what is there something else? Is that the only thing?
Oh my gosh, no. I mean, it's for sure. And clearly, you know, there's genre differences. And I think that needs to be said, right? Because, you know, when we're looking at memoir, we're looking at fiction, and that's like 80% of the list. And, you know, the other 20% will be like nonfiction and other kinds of things. But there's lots of things that are red flags, you know, and because we ask for chapter summaries and overview and 50 pages of the work. And so we're looking at, you know, inconsistencies in fiction. We see a surprising number of mistakes around point of view, head jumping, around the scope of the story being too big, around just feeling generally confused at what we're looking at. You know, with memoir, it happens a lot that people are just telling the story of their lives. And so it's not contained, it's not specific, it's not a slice of life, you know. And so we just rejected one this week that the writing was actually very, very good, but it started in 6th grade and ended at age 65. And when I got through the whole summaries, I was like, I actually don't know what this book is about, you know, other than this person just lived her life. And it was interesting, but not in the way that memoir needs to be siloed. So we see a lot of stuff around just like not executing, you know, even when the writing is very good, not executing within the constraints of the genre. So we're looking at those kinds of big picture elements when we're acquiring.
Yeah, that is, if any of those things that Brooke just mentioned are things that you've heard from your critique partners, you or your beta readers, and those two things are different, you can work on that. You know, in this group, you can continue to, you know, peel back what those things are and show up and ask for help, especially because by being vulnerable and asking for help, you actually get what you need. So that way, before you actually go out and pitch something like, oh, the scope of this is too big, you know, a lot of people who sometimes they join our community and they say, I'm writing this from about my life as a fill in the blank, lifelong juggler. Like, do we need to see the entire life of the juggling, or is there a moment that was a like juggle-rama that we really need to see, and that then someone took away your flaming knives or whatever. And what is that challenge, and how does that relate if you're writing a juggle memoir? Wait, Brooke, you're going to get a bunch of juggle memoirs, so you are welcome for those. So that those are all about the work, and that the overview sometimes can be more about what's in the book rather than how the book serves people, I think. Which I experience.
I will say, like, experienced editors will look at an overview too, and they understand if the book is cohesive in the sense that it has something meaningful for the reader. I mean, fiction is a different experience a lot of times, of course. And so there's that question of what the story arc is. But sometimes I read overviews and I'm just like, I am not understanding what the point of this story is. You know, so if your overview is failing to answer that question, then it's going to need to be tightened up a bit. And at the end of the day, that serves you all the way through your process. You could start working on it now and just endlessly tweak that thing until eventually it is going to become the descriptive copy on your Amazon page, and then that serves your readers as well. So all of these ways that we talk about our books are really actually fundamentally important from now until forever.
Amen to that. I wanted to pause because it helps me edit video later for that mic drop moment. And 2 weeks ago I did a speaker training for everyone. So that'll be fresh in everyone's mind. Make sure you have your mic drop moments. Now, both of you, you're living these portfolio lives. I mean, you've got Brooke, you've got writing and promoting and retreats and conferences and running an entire business. And Allison, you and I talked the other day, and you're like, well, I'm sketching this out, and I'm working on my new book, and I'm also, here, and then I'm also promoting the existing book. Can you share first what's up for you next, and where everyone can connect with you, whether it's a retreat or you're speaking or just on your Insta? Let us know. Allison, I'll start with you.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. So I am currently working on 2 books, and the first one is the prequel to 99 Fire Hoops, and it's a 100-year family saga set in Taiwan that starts with an arranged matrilocal marriage and ends with 4 generations later with an interracial marriage. And the second book, is a contemporary novel set in Mongolia, Inner Mongolia, China, Utah, and Missing Island. Missing Island is a fictitious island. I made it up. And this book is a dynastic saga with family secrets and a 2,000-year prophecy. And it's the Mongolian version of Game of the Thrones, of how a starving surrogate mother discovers that she is the rightful heir to the throne of an ancient Chinese imperial court. And I am hoping that Brooke will like these 2 projects and say yes to them, but no pressure, Brooke. I'm sending these to you when they're ready. And so if you're interested, you can visit my website. It's my name, AllisonHongMerrill.com, where you can sign up for my monthly email, and you can get updates about my writing project. And also, if you sign up for my newsletter, I will translate your name into Chinese characters for you. It's a free gift. So sign up.
Yeah. I'm going to sign up. I think I just DM'd you one day. I'm like, can we be friends? Now, Brooke, what's next for you?
Well, clearly what's up for me mostly is working on the press. And we're very, very busy and have a lot that we're juggling. But on the personal creative side, I am writing my own memoir, and I am 20,000 words in. And Allison did a much better job than I could have at this moment of giving my pitch, because I'm still conceptualizing it, but it's a personal story about a relationship. And so I'm working, I'm getting it out on the page, and it's probably going to be published in 2025.
And well, congratulations on that, fitting that baby in. Can you, I of course was, stalking your website. And so I saw all the places, all the places you're teaching and the workshops you're offering. Can you share, in case, there are hundreds and hundreds of people who want to know and partake? Are any coming up?
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, the one that's coming up immediately is called Reignite Your Inspiration for Memoirists. I'll put the URL in. It's at magicofmemoir.com. I teach every spring and every fall a 6-week memoir workshop. And usually we bring in guest teachers. This time it's just myself and my memoir teaching partner, Linda Joy Myers. We teach a lot of stuff together. So we have that class coming up in the spring. I teach every 6 months, I teach a memoir class. So the next one will start up in June. And I've got a lot of events, both online and in person, coming up, and that's on my events tab at my website, which is also my name.
Yes. And this goes to, for anybody thinking, oh, I'll just follow her on Insta or whatever. Yes, of course, do that. But sign up to get these offers sent to very conveniently digitally to your email. I hesitate. I hate it when people say, sign up for my email. Like, I don't want more mail. I want your tips. I want to know where I can see you next. Please don't pitch me your newsletter, because that sounds horrible. I want the news, not the letter. And I think both of you are sending out such good information and access to you that everyone needs to hand over their emails so that you can offer them convenience. Now, thank you for everything. We have some time to take some questions, and there are a couple of questions. I'm just going to start from what I'm seeing. Deborah Lucas says, do you still refer, this is for Brooke, do you still refer books that you love but you think are not quite ready to publish to a book coach or a developmental editor? Can you?
I mean, to be clear, like it's not about how much we love it, because if the process that we have for acquisitions is really to put people on a track. And so people who dive into our submissions process will see that we have a 2-tiered submissions process. That's why I said it's pretty rigorous. And so at either stage of that 2-tiered process, we may refer someone to coaching or to developmentally editing. Just as to say we're trying to be helpful, it's kind of what Allison said when she said, like, if any of you are recognizing this kind of feedback in your in any kind of writing process that you're doing, like, I don't look at someone who head jumps or someone whose scope of their memoir is too big and think to myself, like, oh my gosh, this is a failed project. I think to myself, you need to go back in there, and revise and think about your structure and what needs to be done. And so we're always hopeful that people will do that, and then you're invited to resubmit. But if something is not executed in the way that the genre demands, then we're saying not yet, and then we do have various coaching processes and developmental editing processes that are available, kind of depending on the scope of what needs to be done.
I think that's really rare. I think it's really rare to submit anywhere and be offered the help or be offered an invitation to go tend and come back and let us talk again. That is uncommon.
Yeah, it's definitely rare. And I think it speaks to the larger mission, which is really about getting voices out there. But we have to have this rigorous submissions process, and the books have to be publish ready, right? So I do think it's a service that we offer in terms of giving the writers assessments and feedback.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, so I'm just seeing that Deborah Lucas also said, it's so great to see the connections between the writing communities, because she knows me through Allison K. Williams, and she knows Brooke through Jenny Nash, and of course you all seem to know Jane Friedman, and it's as if we're having campfires. We're not. I literally went to Brooke's website and I said, hey, could you show up for this? Just like I DM'd Courtney Mom on Instagram. And she said, sure. So, what that means for anyone is, if you see an editor or a writer or a teacher who you're like, you know what, I really would love to find out more about them. Connect with them on social. You might not get a DM back, but you might get a sense of where they're going to be next or how you can interact with them next. I think it's important to know that there are people don't work in this industry if they don't care about storytelling, and if they don't feel like they have a story that the world needs, or they can help storytellers tell their stories that the world needs. I mean, it's just like one or the other. So we're all here for each other. Now, I'm scrolling through Laura Vita, who is a memoirist, but also her book is incredible, and unpublished yet, and still needs to find a home. She asks what Brooke saw that the others missed in Allison Hong Merrill's. And I think you kind of answered that, but other than Allison's declines being about platform, do you think that was it? Or I know you said in the chat.
I do. I think it's when you're an unknown writer and your platform is not strong, and then particularly when you're publishing into very competitive genres. Memoir is uniquely difficult. I mean, worse even than fiction, because it's a complicated genre. I often say, and it just is what it is. So I don't mean to disparage memoir, because I love the genre, but the industry loves to hate memoir. They are just looking for reasons to reject it. And then when it does well, it's celebrated and yay, oh my God, look at how wonderful this book is. But there's a kind of eye roll quality that happens when you pitch your work to literary agents and publishers around memoir. And I've seen it my entire career. So yeah, I do think it's just that we love memoir. We publish a lot of memoir. I'm a personal champion of memoir. And Allison had a really great story, but it was a combination of just not being well known enough and not having a strong enough author platform, and also not being previously published. So all of those things combine. And then as a memoirist, you're being like, well, how am I supposed to get my name out there, if you're not going to take a chance on me? And so that's why I mentioned earlier the catch-22.
Well, last question, I'll give it to you, Allison. How did you get so much exposure for your book? Or did Brooke do it all?
No, she was tireless.
Yeah. She's so humble. She's not going to say, here's what I did, or I work, like all the time. But I get the sense that you say yes. When someone offers you something, you say, an opportunity, you say yes.
So I have this, aside from my permission slip that I signed for myself, okay, that is one thing I use to allow myself to do what works for me. Another thing is more practical. I believe in being an asshole. Ask-hole. Can I say that here?
You can say asshole. I mean,
yes. What I mean is
say ask hole.
Ask hole. And what I mean is, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And so just ask. Ask people that you get on their podcast. Ask people to interview you. Ask people to that you guest blog, to write a guest blog post. Just ask and ask and ask. Because this is what I believe. If I don't get what I want, it's not because I never try. So try and ask and ask and ask, right? Just ask.
I love it.
And if you don't, it's always no. But if you ask, you might get a yes, and then you get that chance to keep moving up and build up that credential. So just ask.
I love it. Just ask and be an ask hole.
Be an ask hole.
That's a perfect way to end Thank you, everyone, for being here. See you in 2 weeks for whatever I dream up. Lots of you are asking for, certain topics. I will deliver them and keep them coming. Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Allison.
Thanks, Allison. That
Thank
was
you.
fun.
I'm gonna go
Great
be
to
an
see all of
asshole.
you.